Welcome, guys, to another episode of the Evolution Podcast. Listen, I have a special guest today. I have not somebody who loves books more than me. Okay, and you're gonna find out why, and you're gonna find out who this guest is. And I am. It's a pleasure and it's an honor to introduce Olivia. So, Olivia, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, it's so nice to meet you. Thank you for having me on the show. I am the marketing manager at Smith Publicity and also the host of their All Things Book Marketing podcast. I've always wanted to work with books, and then I found my dream came true in my career. So I work with authors from every publishing path in every genre to help them promote their book.
So I know, like you mentioned, it's been a dream, but how did you, get that opportunity to get started and actually doing what you do right now?
It's been a very long process, mostly because it's been my whole life track since the beginning. I always wanted to work with words. At first, it was a poet when I was really little, and then it was an author, and then it was an editor. I went to school and got a degree in English and French double major. I went and got a certificate in publishing. I had several internships. They were writing, there was publishing internships, a lot of random little pieces that kind of fell into place. It's interesting, and I've mentioned it before on my Smith Publicity's podcast, but my first internship outside of college was to be an editorial intern at a small publisher in Dallas. And I went in the first day and they were like, great, paperwork's all together, everything looks good. Let's have you take the editorial exam real quick just to make sure you're up to snuff, which should have been fine. I've passed it before, but test anxiety got the best of me, and I actually failed it on that first day. So they came back and they said, well, I suppose publicity downstairs could use some help for a bit if you wanted to go check out down there first. And I fell into this whole career in book marketing. So it was really random happenstance that got me here. But I was lucky enough to learn from them, fall in love with it, and then continue getting a full-time position at a small book publisher in Austin. And then I actually went back and got my grad degree in leadership for creative enterprises at Northwestern during COVID, and then came back and started working with Smith, who I actually knew from my last job. So it's been a long journey, but really those connections and that networking does pay off.
Interesting. So, I mean, I'm pretty sure you've seen, just like you said, you've worked with authors from, pretty much all book genres for the most part. So what do you say they have in commonalities between, let's say I want to write a book on, how to be a parent, to how to, raise your kids, or I want to write a book on how to, I don't know, go to space?
I mean, the general process of getting a book together is kind of the same no matter what genre you're working with. So you still have to write it. You still have to get it edited. You still have to design a book cover, find a publisher, whether that's self-publishing or traditional publishing, whatever it may be. So that part's always the same, but a lot of my authors, regardless of genre, will come in with the same questions too, which is, why would people care about my book? Or how do I promote it? Or how do I make sure that the right people are reading my book? And that's what really interests me, is making sure that you're reaching your target audience. Your ideal reader is the one picking up your book. So it's a lot of me knowing the marketplace and knowing the reader side of things, but also knowing the publishing paths and the author journey so that I can kind of mingle them where they fit. But really, it's a lot of the same insecurities. It's a lot of the same worries. It's a lot of the same questions. Publishing is a very isolating career path, regardless of whether or not you're on the author or the professional side of it. It's really easy to be stuck in your own email or your own Word document or wherever you're writing and feel like you're completely alone in it, which is not at all true. There's all sorts of communities and support out there, but if you don't know that they exist, then it's hard to not feel like you're the only one doing it. And that's really, really scary. So everyone comes in with the same questions.
Interesting. So the question they ask is more or less, where do I begin? Or, because, it's a fun fact, which is very interesting. Fun fact. I actually was writing a book. So this is a funny story. So have you read the book Go for No?
I have not.
I highly recommend you read this book.
Okay.
I would pull it up on screen right now, but I have 40 tabs open, so I'm not even gonna attempt to do that. But basically, the premise of the book was talking about the life of this guy who was not as successful as he could have been. So he passed away, was not as successful as he could have been, and he was basically being shown if he had gone out for the rejection, and he would basically be, he would have achieved his dreams. So I was like, all right. So it inspired me a little bit to write my own book based off the book, me following the principles of the book. And I wrote it. I found an editor, right? I had 30 people who were ready to like, hey, let me know when the book is ready. And, I'll be on the list, which is easier said than done, right? Everyone always says, I'm going to buy your book until, the book comes out. And they're like, well, so long story short, I'm reading through it. I'm reading through the book, and I go to page 2, and I'm like, this book sounds like a toddler wrote it.
Oh
It,
no.
it was just the grammatical errors. It was punctuations. It was a complete disaster. And I was just like, I was so. I guess at the moment, I just was like, I just let my emotions get the better of me, and I just deleted the entire document.
Oh
Gone.
no. Oh, I wish you
So
hadn't done that.
I know. So
Mm.
just completely gone. So I deleted the entire thing, and this was probably about back in 2021. So I deleted the entire thing, and it was 189 pages. I got to the whole thing, and I probably could. Yeah, I was just like, I just would not. It was my whole life story. I told my entire life story, but I think what sucked about it was I had to relive the moment every time I was reading it.
Yes.
All
Yeah.
right. So I was reading it and I had to relive the moment. So that coupled with the fact that I thought it was a toddler that wrote it, I just deleted it.
That breaks my heart. That breaks my heart because when you start writing, you're supposed to just mentally dump it all on the page. It's supposed to come out like
I
that.
thought it was supposed to be. I thought it was supposed to be perfect in the beginning.
Oh no, no, no. It takes so many drafts of revision to get it to where it needs to be for other people to read it. That first draft is supposed to be everything out on the page, a big mess of words and punctuation and grammar. Then you go back through it once, twice, and you start fine tuning it. And then you get an editor to come in with a fresh set of eyes and fine tune it. I totally understand where you're coming from, though. Actually, memoirs are one of my favorite genres to work with. I love when an author comes and they're just wanting to share their story in the hopes that it connects with someone else and makes them feel, again, a little less lonely, that someone else is there with them that has similar experiences or that they can learn from their life. And I actually have worked with a lot of people who just want to leave a legacy behind. And so they'll write their book and then they're really nervous about people reading it, but people are always eager to read real human stories, real human experiences. So it's always an incredible experience to have the author so raw and nervous and scared. And then you put it out there and they get this wave of love for their bravery in sharing their story. And it's always an incredible moment.
Interesting. So what would you say if I was watching this podcast right now? Because I know of a lot of people who say, the common one I get is, obviously, I was supposed to publish a book, but I didn't publish the book. Obviously, I deleted it.
Yes.
But yet, and I promised I was going to stop. I promised I was going to rewrite another revision of it. But now I feel like I've grown as an individual, so I think I would have a little bit more insight. But I hear a lot of people say, I don't want to write a book because I don't think there's anyone that's going to read or resonate with my story.
Not true. You're never going to run out of readers. And that's something that I talk about for people that are worried about a limited readership. I mean, really, you can give away thousands of copies of your book for free, and there's still going to be someone out there that wants to buy your book. But also, regardless of the amount of people that want to read your book or that have the potential of connecting with it, if you reach just like one person, if you really find someone who said, this book spoke to me, it's my favorite book of the year or my favorite book of all time, is that enough? Like, because for some reason, for some authors it is. For some it's not. They want more, they want sales, they're using it as a business card or something along those lines. But for a lot of authors, if they can just get that one reader to really click with it, then they've done their job, and that's incredible. And so it's our job to help you make that happen. I mean, it's not all on you. A lot is on the author. Don't get me wrong. It's a lot of work that goes into promoting a book after you've written the book. Your job is not over when you hit send to that editor or that publisher. But you do have help, you do have support, and making sure that the right people are finding your book, because there is a reader for every book.
Interesting. So you mentioned something. I just want to backtrack a couple sentences. You said there's a few people that use a book as a business card.
Yes.
Is that actually a success? Like, like, hey, nice to meet you. Hold on, let me go in my car a little bit, grab a 300-page book. Here you go. Read this, and then after you're done, give me a call. I'm like, okay. So people actually do that.
Yeah, people actually do that. I don't think it's as common to be like, here's my book as a business card, get in touch. But it is very, very common for business authors to be writing a book, to add to their expertise, to add the author title to their name, and also so that it's an introduction to the services and the work and the value that their business provides. So a lot of times, business speakers will actually waive their speaking fee if the venue will purchase books for everyone that attends. And so they're actually selling books instead of getting paid to come speak. And that's a way of having the audience walk away with something tangible from the keynote or whatever it may be. And then ideally they get in touch with them later. But it's a great introduction to who you are, what you do, how you can help. And then ideally, one person, 2 clients, sometimes even 5 to 10 clients will actually pay for the production of your book. So it doesn't matter if you're not selling books, because as long as you get a handful of new clients, it was worth it. It pays for itself.
Interesting. So that just made me ponder 2 things. So when I go to a conference and they're like, hey, you guys get to go leave here with a book, a free book. Technically it wasn't free. So the speaker actually got paid. The venue actually paid for the books, and then you get to give it for free, and then you get to use it as a lead magnet.
Yes.
And people basically get to come back in and interesting. I'm actually taking notes of that. I'm actually taking notes because I now I have to. How long is the production? On average, how long do you think it takes from when the writer says, "Hey, I'm going to write a book," to actually publishing a book?
Okay, so the writing process itself takes a lot of time, and it really, or it doesn't. It depends on the author. Some people can just write out a book and have it feel like, yeah, it's ready to go. Let's move on to publishing within a month, 2 months, a week, who knows? For a lot of authors, it'll take years. One of my favorite authors, Marcus Zuzak, actually took 10 years to write one of his novels, and he had written really quickly before, but then just took a decade to write the next one. So that part of it can really fluctuate, but I'd say that from finding your publication path, whether that's self-publishing, indie publishing, hybrid publishing, traditional publishing, I would say it typically takes 2 years, like a year for editing and design, and then a year of making sure everything's in place, getting the distribution set up, and then marketing and promotion leading up to the book launch. So a year, I'd say 6 months is the absolute fastest that you want to be doing that. 2 years is a really, really good, sturdy timeline, really reliable. A year is probably the interim of what people try and do to balance that.
Okay, so let's say a year. So because I'm actually thinking about it from a perspective of basically a speaking gig, right? So I'm thinking about it from a perspective of basically a speaking gig, and I'm thinking about it from a perspective of we go ahead and now I go ahead and write the book, even though I don't even have any draft or anything ready, and because I next spring of next year, the goal is to have a an in-person event. So we're going to be doing a webinar. We usually do most of our stuff online, but I want to do an in-person event because you get to see the audience, you get to see everybody, and I like the idea. I'm gonna get the venue to be like, hey guys, listen, this book is going for $12.99, so just pay for it so we can give everybody for free. I really, really, really love that idea there. But let's get a little bit into the promotion part of marketing a book, right? Let's get into the nitty-gritty, right? I write a book, the book is ready to go. Now, how do I get the book out there in the market?
First thing you should always consider is, what is your author branding going to look like? So that's your website, your social media, your newsletter, anything you're doing that you own, that you're putting out there. Some authors, it's a blog and social media. Some people, it's just a website. Some people, it's a mix of all of those. But your brand should align with your messaging, what you want to put out there as far as who you are and what your vision and your purpose is. So your book should align with your vision and purpose, but it's just under the umbrella of your total brand as an author, which is why we always recommend that your website is firstnamelastname.com or .org or whatever it may be. Because if you write another book in the future, or you start a new venture or practice or something, it all falls under that one umbrella of your name and who you are and what you represent. So make sure that that's all up to date. Make sure that you are being super consistent about building your audience through those platforms, whether that's social media and you're building a followership. You really want to get that engagement up, which means that you are engaging with others just as much as you want them to engage with you. If it's a newsletter, you're trying to grow that subscriber base and promoting your newsletter anyway by adding value, being consistent in what you're putting out there. Blog, same thing, putting it out there, making sure you have a dedicated followership so that when you do publish your book, you're asking someone specific. So I can help reach the people that you might not have had, but we want you to have a network so you're not just putting your book out into the ether and then hoping someone finds it. Let's build people that can already support you, already want to support you, and then they can share it with theirs. Word of mouth marketing is the #1 promotional tool. It is the most effective way to market and promote any product, but especially books. So when you have that one best friend that agrees, yep, I'm going to buy your book when it's ready, let me know. Let's say they do buy it, and then they tell their friend, who tells their friend, who tells their aunt, who tells their cousin, who tells their friend or colleague, whoever. All of those people probably trust the word of that one person more than they trust a random ad that I'm helping design or put out there.
Yeah, but does it usually work that way 100%, 80% of the time, 90% of the time where you write a book and your best friends? What about, all right, let's say this. What about if there's a book called How to Pick Your Friends Wisely, or your friends might not have your best interest? What about that book? Well, how would you, because then again, you can't go to your friends and be like, hey, listen, well, this book is probably going to be about you and how our friendship is going. But here you go. Do you mind? So what about if, because I know it's a joke, but in a position in which you don't, because most people, if they're writing a book, it's a way of passing out emotions. It's a way of saying how they truly feel. And sometimes they might be alone, and sometimes they just might not have the friends and the people close by to basically say, hey, read my book, buy my book. What would they do in that situation?
So actually, someone, a guest on my podcast, on Smith Felicity's podcast, actually said only about 20% of your network will follow through with supporting you in whatever way you ask. So we do expect if you have 100 people you ask to buy your book, about 20 of them actually will. And that's just a rough number. It's an estimate. It depends, of course, person to person, case by case. But your network doesn't have to be personal, friends, family relationships. It can be your followers on Instagram. It can be the people that follow your connections on LinkedIn. It can be subscribers to your blog. They can be complete strangers, but they're all warm leads. They're not complete strangers to who you are. They're strangers maybe in real life and person by person, but they know who you are. They know the value you bring. They're more likely to go ahead with whatever you're asking, whether it's a purchase, a review, a share, whatnot. And you can change that ask depending on how close you are with that person. So you might have your A group, which is your knit group, your tight friendship that you know, and maybe you're asking them, buy the book, leave a review, and share it with everyone you know. Then you might have people that you're less close with, like colleagues or former colleagues. You know them, you're friendly with them, but maybe the ask is, I would love for you to buy my book and review it, leave a review. And then you have people that maybe just follow you on LinkedIn and you've never actually spoken, but you're connected because you're in the same field. You think they might be interested in the topic because of what they do for work. You might reach out and say, hey, I just published this book. You might be interested because of your field and this is how it relates. Would love for you to check it out if you have a moment. So there's different tiers of what you're asking for and who you're asking, but it doesn't have to be your best friend.
Interesting. Okay, then that brings me to my next question. Because if we have it in a position in which 20% of my close network will actually support what I'm trying to do, then a question then comes into the play. Do authors really make money?
It depends. It takes a lot of time to begin making money as an author. Like I said, for some of those nonfiction business authors, and that doesn't have to be a strict business author. It can be like a lifestyle or fitness author that has their own business or company or brand or organization, whatever it may be. Selling the book is not really what's making them the money. It's the new clients that they get from the book as a lead generator. So they probably will make money, but they'll make it through the new clients they get because they found them through the book that they discovered through a giveaway on a bookshelf in an airport, whatever it may be. Other authors, it takes time to build up your authorship. You'll notice that a lot of the authors that you've never heard of before that are suddenly New York Times bestsellers, like Allie Hazelwood, for example, is a romance author, and she kind of burst into the scene with The Love Hypothesis a few years ago, and everyone was like, wow, what a great book. It was not her debut novel. She had published multiple books before that. This is just the one that hit the big list. So it takes time because every book you're building upon it. I have an author that started with nothing. She had no books. She had no website, no social medias. We started her from scratch. And then after her third book that she came back to with us, we started having people reach out to us, asking us, hey, do you have her next book? I would love to give it a read and review and share it with my network. I love her. She's an auto buy for me. I want more of her. Let me know if there's another book coming out. And that first book, nothing. Didn't do almost anything. We worked really hard to get it into hands. But that third book, absolutely.
What was the second book and the third book about?
It was all romance within the same series. So was
it like a 50 Shades of Grey kind of romance?
It's more of a small town kind of romance. One of those new genres in romance or a series in romance where it's a friend group and then every book is a different friend within that one friend group. So they're connected, but they can be read as standalones.
Interesting. Okay. Because I'm like, all right. Because you know how my girlfriend just started reading this. I never know it's a romance book, but it's like, it's like a cop, and then there was a girl. She was dating a. I can't remember what he was doing, but he was doing something illegal. And then she was like, she was in love with the guy. And then she met the detective. And then the detective, and then she was trying to go out with both of them. And then something happened. And then the detective and the guy ended up going at it. And I was like, and then, so then he shoots the guy. It was a weird, but for some reason she stayed up reading that. And I was like, you like, you could be reading some. Well, what do you find? I personally didn't find it any interesting. I was just like, okay, this is just two dudes going at it. And I'm like,
it's the escapism. Escapism. It's completely different from your normal life. So that escapism is just everything in that moment. You don't have to.
So it's like a fantasy. So people get to relive, like, put themselves in a position, and then, interesting.
It's also just a break. So if you're stuck in your own brain thinking about work, and you're so stressed about it, this genre has nothing to do with your work. So it's probably also keeping you distracted, giving you a little bit of a mental break from things that are probably looping.
It's better than being on TikTok and spending 4 to 6 hours just scrolling through and just like, what did I do for the whole day? Interesting. So yeah, back to your story. So the third book picks up, and then now she starts generating some income from that.
Yep. Most authors do not make back the money they spend on publishing their first book. They just don't. It's really expensive to publish a book, even
How
if
much does it cost? Example.
Oh gosh.
Just give me a range. Give me a range.
If you're self-publishing, you can probably get away with a few $100s, assuming that you are doing most of it on your own and you're just hiring like a freelance editor real quick. If you're going indie, then it's probably going to cost you a minimum $20,000. Hybrid, it's going to be even more expensive than that. Traditional is different because they'll pay you in advance, but you actually don't start earning royalties until you've earned back the money that they gave you for your advance. It's an advance on your royalties.
So what you're saying is there's a publisher that will be like, hey, I will pay you for your book, right? And then, but they reserve the rights of whatever is sold. They get to keep the money until they recoup everything. And then what's an average royalty?
Advances, gosh, I want to say. See, that's a good question because I don't work for a publisher right now. I work for a publicity agency. So we work with a bunch of publishers, and it will range anywhere between 5 to 20%. Some of the more independent hybrid, they will allow the author to keep entire rights to their book. So they get 80% royalties, whatnot. It depends on the publisher and the path that you take. If you're self-published, obviously you get everything.
Interesting. Okay. All right. So I'm just mathing the math right now. So you're telling me she spent 20 grand to not make any money back on the first book?
I don't know how much she actually spent. She was self-published and she did have support. She had a publishing team behind her. So she had Smith Publicity. She had someone who was helping with distribution, editorial, and design. So I'm guessing that's probably accurate. I don't know the exact numbers because that's all proprietary. Whatever she spends is not really any of my business. But yeah, did not make money back on that first book, maybe even not the second book, maybe even not the third book, but she gets closer and closer every time. And I would say that she doesn't do it for the money. She does it for the love of writing and connecting with the readers. And she was lucky enough to have a second job that is lucrative enough to afford this.
Interesting. Okay. That's interesting. So what you're saying is, if I'm looking at being a publisher as a sole source of income in the beginning, don't do it.
No.
Publishing a book. Don't be an author. Don't be an author because what was her name? J.K. Rowling was homeless, right? When she came out with the Harry Potter.
I'm not familiar with her story before Harry Potter, actually.
I think she was when she came up with her, and now she's worth, I think 2 billion. So I mean, then again, there's the 1 in 7 billion people that ends up, being worth 2 billion. So guys, you might not be J.K. Rowling, so don't get a job for it. That's the moral of the story. So now I'm thinking about this, right? I'm taking in the numbers, I'm going at it, I'm saying, okay, it's gonna cost 20 grand to do this. I got to come up with the first book, and then it's probably gonna take me like 9 drafts. Why don't I just go on ChatGPT and have AI just write my book?
Some people do nowadays, especially now that AI has become more thing. A lot of people will try and do that and then sell it on Amazon or wherever. There are becoming a lot more defensive measures against that. There are ways to tell if a book was written by AI, and
how do you tell?
Dealers are getting up on that.
How do you tell? How do you, like, say I published, because there was a way for you to actually basically make it so your publication is not AI. How to put it? There's a way to make sure that you write a book that's like human-like, and no one will be able to tell that it's an AI.
I couldn't tell you. I know there are people. I just went to a convention, the Gathering of the Ghosts Ghostwriting Convention, and they had a whole panel on AI where they were trying to figure out how does AI work into publishing, and that was a big question: was how do we stop that? And the question was, well, we're working on it. I mean, usually you can kind of tell because the book doesn't have a lot of heart. A lot of these algorithms will pick up on specific patterns within the writing and then block it that way. It could be the way you uploaded it. You could totally get away with it and just have to live with that, I suppose. But ideally, when people are writing a book, they're writing it because they actually believe in what they're writing.
Yeah, I mean, of course, the whole concept of coming up with a book, and when you come up with a book, it's basically, there's an intent to it, right? You want people to be like, oh, hey, I'm a published author. Hey, I authored this book. I think you should check. You want something life changing. But I'm also thinking about it from a perspective of like, hey, you want a lead magnet, right? It's like, okay, I want a lead magnet, because I remember I actually got a book on Kindle. It was a free read, right? So it was a free Kindle read, and all true. It just felt like the dude was just like, hey, yeah, go on my go call me now, and he was discrediting everybody else, but he was just putting himself in a good position. And I was like, you know what? I actually might call this guy. Right. But I think he probably used an element of using, like an AI writer to kind of do it. But now, okay. So obviously you don't like the fact that AI is writing books.
I don't mind AI. It really hasn't helped me much in my work. I'm really specific about the way I do it. And I do believe that AI is not at the point yet where it can be creative. It's still very generative. So it's still writing based on what it's learned from someone else. So I'm not sure we're at the point yet where AI writing is going to be as good as regular writing. And I know that from my own experiences using it to help figure out a pitch angle or a title of an article or something like that. And it's got good ideas, but I usually end up having to heavily edit whatever it is. So if it works for you, great. I do use transcripts from videos, which technically are written by AI all the time to help with blog posts, especially if it's recording. A lot of our publicists will use it to help with pitch writing and getting a really good hook, or for research, especially it's really good at that. I can say, you know, what article topic is the New York Times interested in reading? And then I get a bunch of different topics that I can look into writing a pitch for when I'm pitching the New York Times. So it is useful. I just don't.
So when you say you pitch in New York Times, what necessarily are you pitching them for? Like to have your articles published on New York Times?
Yeah, to have our authors' articles published on New York Times or a book review for our author. It's always on behalf of the author. Our job is to get the author's name out there and really elevate their brand to that of a thought leader.
So now, do you pay for this published articles?
No, we very rarely do paid runs. We typically try to do earned media. So there's paid, owned, and earned media, which is kind of the same as marketing, branding, and publicity. So we really specialize in earned media of publicity. So we're reaching out and we're asking them, hey, do you have an article on this topic? We have an expert who's written a book on it, and the book is a timely introduction to that media source, whoever it may be. And we offer them for commentary, for byline, for interview, for whatever makes sense for that specific outlet. But then you can pay for certain runs or certain viewership, but that leans more into marketing, which we're starting to dip our toe into a little bit. But we do a lot of owned, helping authors figure out their brand. Owned, which is website, social media, that kind of thing. And then we work mostly in earned for publicity.
Interesting. So earned, you write them the article and you're like, hey guys, this is awesome. I think you need to have this on there. Like, what's your pitch? How do you pitch them? Like, you know, let's say, do you jump on a Zoom meeting with
No, usually over email. Most, I would say probably 95% of the time it's over email. Often we try and go for reaching out to media journalists that we have a connection with, that we've worked with previously, and we'll let them know, hey, X, Y, and Z, I hope you're well, or whatever introduction makes sense. I recently saw you wrote an article on the 10 best business books. I wanted to mention that one of my authors I'm representing is X, Y, and Z, who wrote X, Y, and Z book about X, Y, and Z. And the connection is this. I wanted to offer him for interview, commentary, byline article on any of the following topics that he can speak to. And then if the media journalist is interested, then they might read back and say, yeah, I'm interested in seeing something on this topic that you gave me. Can you have them draft something? And then we'll go through kind of a back and forth. Sometimes nothing comes from it, and sometimes it does. It's a lot of work of us just reaching out and hoping for the best, but we also know the media landscape and we know our authors and what they bring to the table. And so we're really good at finding those partnerships.
Okay, so now I have a question for you, right? You know, like when you pick up a book, the book goes New York Times bestseller.
Sure.
New York Times bestseller. And you know, it's like, you know, and then it's how can you have so many New York Times bestsellers? Like, how can you have, like, you know?
Yep. We just did a whole month at Smith Publicity on bestsellers. We have blog posts, podcasts. We just did a webinar on bestsellers. So I feel very refreshed in this area. The bestseller list, especially in New York Times, it updates weekly, which is why you have so many. So they might do 50 New York Times bestsellers, but it's every single week. So there's lots of times then when you see bookstores with all New York Times bestsellers, well, if they're just keeping up with that, they probably still will have a pretty good list to choose from, as just looking at the past 3 months. That being said, they've really kept it close how they go about deciding who's a bestseller, but we do know it has to do with sales numbers in relation to other books within the genre within a certain time frame. So typically authors will use their pre-order. So the book is available for purchase for pre-order, but it's not published yet. It's not out yet, to collect sales, because all of those pre-orders don't count as sales until the first week. So if you can get 100,000 people to buy your book within 3 months, it all counts as if you got 100,000 sales within that 1 week, which the New York Times looks at. But it's a lot of balancing. Where did the sales come from? Is it digital, online, in person, indie bookstore? Is it a block retail chain? Where are they coming from? Where in the US geographically are the sales coming from? How many? And vice versa. So it's a nice balance. And there are people whose whole job it is to help you reach those bestseller lists. But USA Today just came back and they updated their list. They partnered with an indie bookstore, The Novel Neighbor, to help make bestseller list more accessible for indie and self-published authors. So we are seeing a lot of changes within the list, but Amazon bestseller is the one that is the most reachable, the most reasonable. And the benefit of those lists isn't necessarily just that you get to say, my book is a bestseller. It's also the algorithmic promotion you get from whatever retailer you hit on, or being able to really get the book in front of more eyes. So on Amazon, it may not take much to reach bestseller, but you are seeing better promotion from their algorithm in the back end.
Interesting. So now, what is you mentioned Amazon bestseller, right? What's the prerequisite to be a bestseller? Do you know the numbers as far as the sales numbers go?
It is all depending on other books in the genre. So if you're one of 3 books that publishes, Amazon actually updates hourly. So that one's a much, much quicker. But if you're one of the few books published within a certain time, then your competition is really low. So it's going to take you less books to sell to hit that. But if you came out with a book in a genre where a bunch of books are coming out all at the same time, then you have a lot more competition. You're going to have to sell more. So it really depends. You could reach Amazon bestseller with 2 sales in the right hour, in the right category, in the right genre. But is it really going to be worth it? Because your book's not going to be like super discoverable. It's not going to be among the other books. People aren't going to be looking for you in that tiny little category at 3 a.m.
Got you. So you want to, yeah. So what you're saying is, if I publish my book that I'm probably going to be writing in the bed at 3 a.m, maybe they might not be looking, but I might have an Amazon bestseller for an hour. Okay. Yeah. So my question is this. I have another question for you. So why is it called bestseller instead of best read?
Ooh, I guess we can't guarantee that the book is being read. We can only guarantee that it was sold. I mean, there's nothing we can do to make the reader read it.
Then again, this then brings the point as to, if I'm from an author perspective, because we're always judging ourselves, right? Because some people are judging themselves based off the fact as to, well, nobody bought my book. If nobody buys my book and I didn't sell anything, then that means, was it a good book?
Not necessarily. It could just mean that no one is able to find your book. Your book is not discoverable. I mean, it does take a lot of search engine optimization, making sure that your targeting is correct, making sure that you are putting in effort. You can absolutely publish a book and not do anything, and it just sits on that virtual bookshelf doing nothing. But ideally, as an author, you're really active in promoting it to the right people.
Got you.
At least one sale.
So the reason why I bring that up is because, I used to be in, we're still pretty much in business, but I used to be an insurance agent. And one of the things I used to say was, it was not the best agent's not the agent that knows everything about, the product. The best agent is the one that actually sells the most, which means gets in front of more people. So would you say that, part of being a successful author requires an element of knowing how to promote?
Yes, absolutely. And that's probably one of the hardest parts, because authors love to be behind the screen. They don't want to be in front of it. They don't want to be in front of the camera. And a lot of the work we do at Some Publicity is educating authors on how to self-promote in a way that feels genuine, who they are and what their brand is. So for a lot of authors, if you don't want to go out there and be like, hey, buy my book, it's really, really good, or leave a review for my book because it helps so much, what they do end up doing is saying thank you to everyone that has so far supported me in buying my book or leaving a review. It really means a lot to me. You all know the work that went into it. And so they're using thanks as a way to self-promote. And it feels more natural for them, because it's not, look at me. It's, I want to make sure that everyone knows how grateful I am for everything that everyone does for me. And it's a nice way to pull other people into the spotlight with you.
Interesting. So let's say you have no sales. So, you've not had anybody who's gone ahead and purchased your book, right?
Okay.
And you want to promote your book. What are the ways in which you can, I'm a brand new author. I'm coming in, I'm fired up. I think my book is the book that's like right there. What are the ways in which you can go ahead and promote that book?
Yeah. So reviews are essential. You definitely want to make sure your website's up to date and you have a social media platform to be able to reach people. So that's probably number one. But then reviews really add credibility to your book, because you're hearing from real readers the value that the book brings. So you want people to be reviewing the book every single time that they buy it, So making sure to follow up with any sales. But if you're just trying to get it out there first and foremost, it's really going to be posting about it on social media and using the right hashtags. Get the book in front of people's faces. Make sure that they're seeing it, that there's a place for them to see it and discover it. And then you can always put money into advertising like Amazon ads. You could do giveaways on social media or on Goodreads or Storygraph. They all will host giveaways, and you can just seed the book. And I really, really recommend seeding as many books as possible. Give your book away. You're not going to run out of readers. Give your book away as much as possible with the hopes that they come back with a review, because that review is going to help lead to more sales and more promotion by the algorithm of the retailer.
Interesting. So that's one way. What other way would you say is out there? I'm a new author. Let's say, okay, I've seeded the books, but, I want to hit a number of 100,000, book sales, right? Because I want to be in the New York Times bestseller. I'm going to need to sell them all in 3 months so I can hit it within a week, right? So I'm seeding a book. So I'm seeding my books. What's another? Can you give me about another 2 to 3 methods in which people can use to promote?
Yeah, seeding the book is a big one. I actually just did a podcast episode with Selena Rezvani, who was one of our authors who became a Wall Street Journal bestseller before they took that list away. And she really talked about the importance of activating your network, growing your network, and then speaking as a tool. So like I mentioned before, use your speaking, use whatever platform you have to promote your book that way. So she had a lot of people who already supported her, already believed in her, and she would then waive whatever speaker fee, whatever consultation fee it was, in lieu of them, they would actually buy the book instead and give it out to their company if she was doing a workshop, or give it away to the audience if she was speaking. And that is what helped her really reach that bestseller list there, was just using the book. It's seeding. It's still seeding the book, but seeding the book in a way that's a little bit different, because she was doing that in lieu of whatever fees that she was originally charging. So that's one way. Advertisements is always a great way. We really emphasize impressions. So that's anytime anyone sees your book, that's an impression. And it usually takes anywhere between 5 to 15 impressions for someone to make that purchasing decision, because it takes about 5 to 15 times of you seeing something before you think, okay, I've seen this book everywhere. I'm just gonna get it. I'm finally gonna get it. So making sure that your book is everywhere that it can be. So you're promoting it on social media, you're going to your local bookstore and asking them to carry it, especially if it's a local bookstore. It's, they usually have a local author section, and they do want to support those authors. That's a great way. Having your friends and family, whoever you do have, colleagues, sharing the book that way. Having people that have purchased the book, if they're strangers, review the book that way. And those are all individual impressions. Those are all individual opportunities for someone to come across your book.
Interesting. Okay. That's okay. So now I have a question for you. Personal question. Okay. Have you written a book? Have I written a book? No. Any plans on writing a book?
I've thought about it. I think if I were to write a book, I would probably go the way of publishing a zine instead.
A zine?
A zine, like a little mini magazine. I might have one. No, I don't have one on me. Well, here. This is a zine. It's a Danny Kane. It's like a little, really, really thin book, but it's just a short publication that kind of hits on a topic.
Okay, so a zine, like a nickname. Okay, a zine. Okay, so when can we expect the zine?
Hopefully in the next 10 years. I don't have active plans. Ideally, eventually one day.
Eventually within the decade, you get a book.
When I set aside the time, because you never find the time, you have to actually actively seek it out. But that is something I'm interested in doing, probably on the topic of book marketing, because it is really my passion. But no, maybe in the next decade or so. Who knows?
Maybe the next a decade is a very long time. That's a very long time.
Well, what about you? When are you going to publish your book?
I see what you did there.
You rewrite.
Will I rewrite?
Scraps of.
Will I rewrite? Okay, so that's honestly something I promised myself last year. It was the end of the year. I was going to start writing a book, but you said something. You said you actually have to put the time in your calendar and block the calendar that you're going to start writing. And you know what's funny is, like, I genuinely enjoy the read, because there's a lot of research that goes into a book, right? Yeah. Especially if you really want to have I'm a very big stats guy. I'm a big numbers guy. So I want to make sure I have numbers in my books. I want to, because you want to mix a number, because I believe in, whenever you publish a book, there's two readers. There's a logical reader and an emotional reader, right? And logical readers want to see numbers, right?
Yes.
If you say, here is how to basically go ahead and wear sunglasses the right way in the sun, right? Here's an example of a book. You said that there's an audience for anything. So I mean, hey, some people might want to know, like, this is how you put the sunglasses versus this is how.
Someone will buy it.
Yeah. But then again, what about if, because I want to put numbers as to, maybe there's a 20% difference in angle, and then the emotion side of things. It's like, hey, you look cool like this. You could go ahead and you can go from being single to being in a relationship just by putting the glasses on. So there's multiple angles that you can go by. But I think personally for me, when I don't want to come into anything because I know someone's going to comment, hey, I'm waiting for the book or pre-order for the book. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do.
Okay.
Because you said two things. You said, you mentioned a few things, in the sense that most people do, put out your book because they want to leave like a legacy, right? But I want to leave it as a legacy, but I also want to leave a book that's also a great, phenomenal lead magnet. Like you read this book, you're like, oh my God. That's what I want. So I want people in tears when they read the book. I know, it's sad. Yeah, I know.
I like that. That's a good goal.
I mean, yeah, it is a good goal. So I think I will start writing on it because I prefer to start now. I probably will start. I don't want to put it because then it's like, now I'm committed to it. This is tough.
I was going to start this year. I signed up for a community of creatives that we were all going to hold each other accountable, and it felt good. So I know it's hard to commit to that timeline.
So what I do need is, I think, just from what you said, a community. I think I need a community of authors, because I need to be in an environment of other people writing, right? Because I'm in an environment of people selling and doing business, right? And most of them are like, well, why do a book? Just put an ad out. What do you need a book for? Or have ChatGPT write your book. So, and I, as much as, I would say, as much as I love ChatGPT, we're doing the copy for the ad, not for the ad, for the webinar. And we plugged it into ChatGPT, and it was like, unlock, revolutionize, and I was like, dude, I'm tired. I don't want to unlock anything. So
too much work.
Too much work. I'm not trying to unlock anything or do any revolutions. I just want a catchy headline that people read this and they go, yes, I want it. But I think, you know what? I'll probably start writing between now and April. The reason why is because I think when I start writing, because when I do my webinar presentations, I have to research and I have to write. So I think I'm probably going to, by between now and April start, but probably will not be out to be edited for another year. So probably will be published in 2026.
Okay.
Probably 2026. We're shooting for 2026. So as we wrap up here, can you explain a little bit about the indie? Because you mentioned indie publishing, right? Well, what is that?
Indie and hybrid publishing. So that's outside of the big 5 publishing houses. So traditional publishing resides in the US within the big 5 houses, which are Penguin Random House, Hachette, Simon & Schuster, Macmillan. And actually, I know Simon & Schuster and Penguin Random House there's all sorts of politics within those big publishing houses, but those are the ones that are going to buy the rights to your book and then publish it, and then you get royalties once you earn back your advance, all of that greatness. So they're the ones people know. Most books you read and promoted are probably going to be from the big 5 because they're well-oiled machines who have been around forever. Hybrid is kind of a mix. So you do have some publishers who use pieces of that traditional, but then also pieces of the indie, which allows the author to be more involved with the publishing process. So an indie author is typically someone who is either self-published or with a smaller publisher that works within their own system. So they have their own way of going about publishing a book and distributing it, editing it, designing it, whatever it may be. So typically the author does retain the rights so that they're not selling their book, but they're paying a lot more upfront. But then they get a lot more on the back end after publication too. And they have that support along the way, and they feel more part of the process. Whereas a lot of traditional authors, while it's great to get that big name recognition and support, A lot of times they're kind of left out in the cold and they don't know what's going on. They don't know when their book's coming out. They don't know what's happening. They don't know where in the timeline it is. So if you want more hands-on process, I do recommend going indie. And you can go indie with self-publishing. You can just get a really good supportive team behind you and self-publish and still be a successful indie author. We see more and more and more of that. We even see some traditional authors nowadays who decided to go back to the indie route. So Brandon Sanderson is one of them. He's a really famous fantasy author who went traditional and then decided, you know what, I'm going to self-publish my next book and just make it more accessible, have more control over the process, more control over the writing, and really feel more hands-on within the project. So there's lots of ways to publish your book. You're not set on having to go find an agent who's going to go sell your book. You can do it all yourself. You can kind of get a mix. You can go someplace, get the support. There's lots of options. I know Jane Friedman, she has a blog and she has a whole list of the different publishing pathways to look at. I believe I posted about it on LinkedIn a few months ago, but I will repost it. Jane Friedman's blog is an excellent resource, as well as a bunch of other places. Smith Publicity has a blog. Probably why I'm not super keen on writing is because I already do a lot of writing for their blog. We have the newsletter that goes out. We have podcasts that exist. There's whole lists of resources out there for anyone looking to write a book and define which pathway is best for them.
Gotcha. Interesting. And I know we didn't talk a little bit more about the your poetic journey, because I know you're a poet, right? That's why you said you do a zine. So hence poetry is very intimate, very, like, I would say confusing in a bit, unless you like, sometimes it's a little bit confusing, but it's very much like it's like a puzzle. Like you almost have to can you off the top of your head, can you hit us with a few poetry?
I haven't written my own poetry.
No. Can you give us an example?
Oh yeah. I have a couple Emily Dickinson poems memorized. We have one that's really short. I like a lot. It's a word is dead when it is said, some say, but I believe it just begins to live that day. And that's the whole poem. Really short, really sweet, really simple. Just got longer ones. I'm nobody. Who are you? Are you nobody too? There's a pair of us. Don't tell. They banish us, And that's one verse from.
Is that like a romance poetry? Because the way you do this, and I was like, okay, all right.
Romance.
That's okay. You're getting the groove there. All right.
Kind of tongue in cheek. I think Emily Dickinson is incredibly tongue in cheek, very sarcastic. So I just like, I'd rather be nobody than somebody, and I relate to that. I like that.
Interesting. Rather be nobody than somebody.
I'd rather be the behind the scenes, getting the author into the spotlight that they've earned. I'd rather, I mean, I have no problem being in the spotlight, obviously, but I do like being behind the scenes, helping someone get and reach their goals.
Okay. That's good. All right. So talk a little bit about the podcast and where can people find you, because just based off the conversation, it's very interesting. And I'm thinking about it from a perspective of, if I was in the mindset and a frame of mind where, I want to get a book out, then I pretty much want to be talking to the experts. And just by listening to you and from what you say, I'm going, interesting. When it comes time to write the book and I'm ready to publish, I was like, okay, Olivia, I've got the first one.
You come to us as early as you want. We have authors that haven't even written a book yet who already partnered with Smith Publicity to help them get there. You come as early as you want with your book idea, and we will help you reach your goal.
Oh, that's a little scary, but I think because I think a book is a good way to a speaking gig.
I think so too. I absolutely agree.
I think it's a good way to a speaking gig. I think it is. I think, what? I think I might take you up on that. Between now and April, I'll sit down and think about, what I want to put out there. But I think it's a good path towards the vision I have. So.
Yeah, you have my email, so you reach out to me personally, but all of your listeners, watchers can learn more about Smith Publicity at smithpublicity.com. You can follow us on social media at Smith Publicity, pretty much everywhere. You can follow our own podcast, which is the All Things Book Marketing Podcast, to learn more, or just reach out at info@smithpublicity.com. And that's our general email inbox. Someone will get back to you very quickly about whether or not we can help you reach your book publishing goals.
Awesome, guys. So the links, guys, are going to be down in the comment in the description of this if you're on YouTube. So definitely just click the description section to be able to access that. And it's also going to be we'll make sure it's the pinned comment. So the first pinned comment. And then if you're on Spotify listening to this, then I think you go in the description of Spotify and you'll be able to access the links as well. Which is funny because we have a lot of listeners to Spotify, but I'm like, I never really know how it works on Spotify. I was just like, yeah, let's just put it out there. But before we end, I've actually got some fun questions for you.
Okay.
If you could be any book genre, what would you be and why?
I'm going to be a book about books, probably, or self-help. I am known as the therapy friend within my friend group. So probably some nonfiction, some kind of how-to, regardless of what the genre is. It's going to be a how-to book.
Okay. Have you ever tried using poetic techniques in your marketing strategies?
Oh, yeah. We use alliteration all the time in our pitches, especially in our subject lines and our emails. We'll say something fun. Smith Publicity speaks out, and you have the 2 S's, or the power of Smith Publicity, and you have the P's, stuff like that. Super rhyming, super, super clever. Love all of those little techniques. They're fun.
Okay. So last one, if books could talk, what do you think they would say about the authors?
I think in your case, your book would say, please don't judge me yet. I'm not done. I haven't even gotten all dressed up. Like, I just woke up. Like, give me some time. I think a lot of other books would probably say, like, oh, please put me out of my misery. I have gone through enough editing. I am ready. Like, I do not need another coat of varnish. Just let me go out into the world. But ultimately, I think they would be really grateful for the time and attention that the author has put into making them what they are.
Interesting. Okay, I think the book that I wrote would have probably said that. It probably would have been. I was thinking more when I was reading it was like it would probably be telling the reader, you need to burn your eyes because I believe that you read it.
You hadn't even let it wake up yet. It was still in its pajamas with its bed head and its morning breath. You hadn't even given it a chance yet.
But the thing was, it had a really bad morning breath. So.
So let's buy it some toothpaste. Let's get it going.
It needed way more than toothpaste, but we'll definitely be doing that. But Olivia, is there anything else you want to? Any last comments? Any last words you want to say to the listeners?
Listeners, I would just say that give your writing a chance. Reach out for support. Find your community. Find those resources. You are absolutely not alone in your goals and in this journey, wherever you are within it. There are people sitting there thinking, I want to write a book, but I don't know if I can. There are people sitting there thinking, I've written a book, but now I don't know what to do. Google those questions, find your people, connect, ask questions, ask for help. And I wish you the best on your journey.
Awesome. Then again, guys, last words from me. Thanks again for everyone being on here. I know it's a pre-recording and you're watching this live. Definitely go ahead and check out some of Olivia's work. And don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like and share this video with some friends and family. And if you're thinking about writing a book, definitely don't do what I did and reach out to Olivia. All right, guys.